Hey class, I'm here to do a quick overview of the Eastern Theater battles that we've covered so far about the Civil War. A lot of this information is coming from your presentations, which is great. I just want you guys to have this video as a way to study for your quiz. Some of this information is also coming from Mr. Custer and his camp out that we went to last Friday, so a special thank you to him as well. Let me get right into it. Our first battle was Fort Sumter. Not much of a battle, more like a shelling. Union wanted to keep their fortress in South Carolina. South Carolina wanted that fortress back because they had seceded from the Union and they thought it was theirs. 34 hours after the shelling began, Major Anderson, the Union general in the fort, held up the white flag, gave up Fort Sumter to the Confederates. We had ourselves a war. The Civil War is on. That is April of 1861. First major battle's at Bull Run, 25 miles outside Washington, D.C. There are spectators that come to watch this first battle of the war. Sounds like fun. Drive your carriage out there, watch it happen, watch the Union get slaughtered. They get slaughtered because, well, they actually do well off the bat. Classic flanking maneuver, which at the beginning of the war, the Union troops weren't so ready for. But they had this flanking maneuver. They had the Confederates on the ropes. And then we have a man whose name was Thomas Jackson who holds them up. From that day forth, he's known as Stonewall Jackson because as the Confederates were running away, someone turned and said, "Hey, look at Jackson standing there like a stone wall." So from then on, he becomes Stonewall Jackson. And the Confederates hold the line there, rout the Union, chase them down. Union doesn't know how to retreat in the same way they weren't ready to flank. They're simply not ready for this war, this battle, etc. And they lose troops. They get troops captured. Disaster proves two things. This is going to be a long and bloody war. And both sides are going to need to rally, both get supplies, troops, etc., to be ready to fight this long war. Our next battle is the Shenandoah Valley Campaign. Let's remember the Union strategy right off the bat is to go for Richmond. McClellan takes 100,000 troops with him via the ocean, by sea, by the Atlantic, up the Chesapeake to try to take Richmond. While he's doing that, our boy from Bull Run, Thomas Jackson, who's now Stonewall Jackson and will be till he dies, he's up in the Shenandoah Valley trying to hold up the Union forces so that McDowell, who was our general at Bull Run, can't support McClellan, who's our general that's going down to Richmond. Thomas Jackson is known during this campaign for a bunch of wins. He loses the first encounter in the Shenandoah Valley Campaign and doesn't lose another one. He does this through quick maneuvers, excellent tactics, disciplined troops, etc. He's able to hold up forces twice his size with his movements, with his tactics, and he famously escapes the Union trap where they try to catch him and crush him because he's too quick, and he's burned their bridges, and his forces move quicker than theirs do. And he then gets to Richmond before McDowell and the other Union armies do. 7 days battle is the fight for Richmond. This is McClellan with his 100,000 who have landed in Richmond. They're trying to take the Confederate capital, and they do not have any luck. They go back and forth day after day after day. Lee holds them off. And as I was saying with the Shenandoah Valley Campaign, Thomas Stonewall Jackson gets down to Richmond to support before McDowell and the Union generals do. Significance, of course, the Union doesn't get Richmond. This is also where we get our famous Battle of the Monitor versus the Merrimack, our first battle of ironclads, which was a lot of fun and explained well in class. Then we end up with second Bull Run. A year and a month later, after our first Bull Run, we're back at it in the same place, Manassas, Virginia. The river was called Bull Run, which is why we still call it Bull Run today. This time it's Pope who commands the Union forces down here, and it's Lee's idea to catch Pope and then catch McClellan, who's still licking his wounds and returning from his errors, his losses, down in Richmond. This time, again, a back and forth battle between Union and Confederates in that same location. Pope ends up getting crushed again and retreating. This time his retreat was a little bit more orderly. Confederates win another battle. So if you're looking at these early battles, they're all Confederate victories. Until, switching over to the other side of my board, Antietam. This is where the Union gets their first victory. McClellan, who outnumbers Lee greatly, has Lee's battle plans. Part of that is that Stonewall Jackson's going down to Harper's Ferry, Virginia to raid the arsenal, which we know is there from John Brown's raid in 1859. McClellan, knowing Lee's plans, should be able to crush Lee here at Antietam. When he doesn't, he loses his job. Here's why. He takes too long to attack. He doesn't commit his whole army. And when he gets an advantage and the Confederates start retreating, he doesn't pursue. They get over the river. He stops his forces. They regroup, etc., only to fight 2 more Confederate victories in Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville. Criticism, of course, of McClellan is that he should have attacked, should have finished, should have crushed Lee's army there, especially having the battle plans, and he didn't. He gets fired. He's replaced by a guy by the name of Burnside. Ambrose Burnside does no better. In fact, he is much worse. He fights at Fredericksburg, takes on the Confederates there, which is one of the dumbest decisions you can make. Mr. Custer explained this well. The Confederates are behind a stone wall, and they have cannons behind them to crush the Union. And that is exactly what happened. Wave after wave of Union troops are sent in, only to get mowed down. As Mr. Custer told you, the 20th Maine, they get stuck using dead bodies as cover in the field, and then they get left there as the Union retreats. Disaster for the Union. Burnside asks nicely of Lincoln if he can be relieved of his duty, and he is. We end up with a guy by the name of Hooker for the next major battle at Chancellorsville. He doesn't fare much better. This is the famous flanking maneuver where Lee splits up his army. Very risky because your center, if you're splitting someone off to go around, your center is weak. So if Hooker had attacked Lee's center after he split off Jackson for the flanking maneuver, that would have been bad for the Confederates. Hooker doesn't know that. In fact, he doesn't see this flanking move coming at all. The flanking move completely surprises the Union, so much so that when the rebels come over the hill and run screaming down at the Union camp, some of them surrender right away. Obviously, the Confederates rout them. The Union retreats, and Confederates pursue. This is another chance, unlike Antietam, when the Union had a chance to pursue and win the war. The Confederates here had a good chance to pursue and knock out the Union, give them a death blow here. They tried to a certain extent. At nightfall, famous story from this battle is our boy Stonewall Jackson, who's been so successful all war. He's riding back on his horse back to the Confederate lines, and the rear guard, who are watching the lines on patrol, shoot him in the left arm. His left arm gets amputated. He eventually gets pneumonia and passes away as a result of this wound from Chancellorsville. The famous quotation from that is General Lee writes to Jackson and says, "Give my regards to Thomas Stonewall Jackson. Tell him while he has lost his left arm, I have lost my right." That's how important Jackson was to Lee, and that is a result of the Battle of Chancellorsville. Last battle, the big turning point of the war, touched on very well in class by the student presentations in both of my classes. July 1 to 3 of 1863, the battle happens outside of Gettysburg. Both troops, Union and Confederates, converge on Gettysburg, and we have huge numbers of troops located there. First day, the Confederates push the Union back. The Union find a couple of ridges to defend themselves upon, and they kind of create what looks like a fishhook to defend what was Gettysburg. Now they're beneath Gettysburg, or behind, rather, Gettysburg. And famously, on the second day of fighting was the 20th Maine's hold of Little Round Top. The Alabama forces were charging up this hill, and the theory was that if that left flank, where the 20th Maine were holding this hill, if they had given up, if they had lost, then the Confederates would have been able to come down that hill and around and crush the Union Army from behind. This was the famous battle Mr. Custer talked about, where the 20th Maine was out of bullets, and when they were out of bullets, instead of retreating and giving up that hill, because they knew the rest of the Union line was behind them, they fixed bayonets and pulled the hinge method and attacked, and were successful. That's the one where he also talked about how the Alabama troops were out of water. Big mistake. So that was day 2 of Gettysburg. The Union line holds, and then day 3, the Confederate plan to break this stalemate, to go at the Union line, which is well defended, was called Pickett's Charge, where the Confederacy launches 13,000 troops to run directly across a field at the middle of the Union line to try to break the line and crush the Union forces. They don't break the line. Union troops are chanting, "Fredericksburg, Fredericksburg, Fredericksburg," because here come the Confederates across an open field where the Union are defended by a wall with cannons behind them. You can guess the result. There was something like 50% casualties of the Confederate forces who attacked in Pickett's Charge. they were repelled. They got to one point of the Union wall, and even that was insignificant as the Union was able to repel those troops. Significance of this battle, of course, is there's never another major battle fought in the North. On July 4th, on Independence Day in this country, the Confederates retreated. They went back down south, and Lee never really gains enough momentum again to win this war, or to get help from Europe. Don't forget, that's always on the back of their mind. And of course, this July 4th happens to be the same day that Vicksburg falls. And Vicksburg, of course, is in Mississippi, and that's a fortress along the Mississippi River that the Confederates held. But the Union had this plan to sort of a chokehold plan to take the Mississippi, cut off the Confederacy. So between Gettysburg and Vicksburg, they do a good job of crushing the Confederate forces and sending them on the retreating path. So as you can see, when we look at our first column, we see all these Confederate victories. We see that they're kind of taking over the Eastern Theater, crushing the Union forces. And even so, again, here with Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville, but Gettysburg and the sheer might of the Union, their population, their huge fighting force, finally gets a big victory on the mistake of Pickett's charge. So between that and Vicksburg, turning point in the war. When you guys come in tomorrow, your classmates will start talking about the Western Theater. I'll try to get you guys another video that summarizes those major Western Theater battles so you guys are ready to take the quiz on the Civil War battles. Thank you guys. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow in class.